My brother arrived like it was a ribbon cutting. Polished shoes, perfect watch. That calm, well-fed smile he wore whenever he thought money made him untouchable. He didn't look at me the way you look at a sibling. He looked at me the way you look at a loose end. His attorney walked beside him carrying a thick folder like a trophy. Behind them, my parents took the front row, dressed like they were attending church, not court. I sat alone at the respondent's table with one slim envelope in my bag and my hands folded in front of me like I was waiting for a verdict I already understood. The courtroom smelled faintly of toner and old wood. The ceiling fan clicked every time it turned, like a metronome counting down someone's patience. When the clerk called the case, my brother stood before I did. "Your Honor," his attorney began, on a voice bright and confident, "we're here to petition for immediate transfer of assets. My client is requesting full control of his sister's property and accounts due to her instability and history of hiding assets from the family." The word instability landed like a dart meant to stick in anyone listening. My brother turned slightly so the people in the gallery could see his face as he sighed, performing concern, performing sacrifice. Judge Merritt looked down from the bench, expression neutral in the way judges learn to survive. "Ms. Lane," he said to me, "do you have counsel?" "I'm representing myself today, Your Honor," I replied. My brother's smile widened a fraction. He liked that. He'd been counting on it. His attorney took a step forward. "We are requesting everything," he said. "All personal property, bank accounts, any interest in real estate, and any potential future proceeds. My client has supported Ms. Lane financially on multiple occasions. Enough is enough." My brother leaned toward the microphone, just enough for the judge to hear and the room to notice. "She's not well," he said softly. "She gets unpredictable. We just want to protect the family." A murmur moved through the benches like wind through dry leaves. I didn't turn around, but I felt eyes on my back. The kind of eyes people use when they're deciding what you deserve. Judge Merritt's gaze remained steady. "Mr. Hale," he said to my brother, "what is the legal basis for requesting everything?" His attorney didn't miss a beat. "Guardianship-adjacent relief, Your Honor. Protective control, temporary orders pending further evaluation." It was dressed up in careful words, but the intention was blunt. Erase me on paper. Judge Merritt tapped his pen once. "Ms. Lane, do you understand what they are asking?" "Yes," I said. "And your response?" I looked at my brother for the first time. Evan Hale, well-off, well-connected, always the family's shining example. The one who never raised his voice because he didn't have to. He'd been buying rooms for years, buying silence, buying people's benefit of the doubt. His eyes met mine, and his expression was almost kind. Almost. He leaned closer as the judge shuffled documents, and in a voice only I could hear, he whispered, "Just sign it over. You'll have nothing left anyway." I didn't flinch. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing pain. Instead, I stood and reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a stack of exhibits. I didn't carry a binder. And I lifted one sealed page, an envelope with a single sheet inside, and walked it to the clerk. "Your Honor," I said, calm, "I have one request. Please add this to the record before you consider their motion." Judge Merritt's eyebrows rose slightly. "What is it?" "It's a sealed notice," I replied. "It pertains to the inventory they're asking you to award." The attorney gave a small laugh like I'd just offered a child's drawing as evidence. My brother watched me with that same polished smile, but his eyes narrowed, just a fraction, as if he didn't like anything he hadn't pre-approved. Judge Merritt held out his hand. The clerk brought the sealed page to him. He looked at the outside, then nodded to the bailiff. "Bailiff," he said, "open it and read what's necessary for the record." The bailiff, a tall man with tired eyes and a voice that carried without trying, broke the seal carefully. He unfolded the page and scanned it. Something moved in his face. Not surprise exactly, more like recognition. He cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. This appears to be an inventory notice attached to an asset disclosure. The attorney's smile tightened. Your Honor, we already submitted an inventory list. Judge Merritt lifted a hand. We'll hear it. The bailiff glanced toward the attorney's folder. May I have the petitioner's inventory list, Your Honor? The attorney handed it over confidently, as if the list itself was a weapon. The bailiff opened it and began reading in the same tone he would read a sentence. Flat, official, unavoidable. Item 1, he said. High primary checking account ending in 428. Item 2. He stopped. Just for a breath. Then he looked up. Not at the judge. At my brother. The room didn't make a sound. Even the ceiling fan seemed quieter. The bailiff's eyes stayed on Evan for a long second, and when he spoke again, his voice had shifted. Less recital, more caution. Your Honor, he said slowly. Before I continue, I need to confirm something about the second line item. Because the way this is listed... He paused again, eyes still locked on my brother. Doesn't match who actually owns it. My brother's attorney tried to laugh it off. Your Honor, he said, forcing lightness into his voice. The bailiff is simply reading an inventory list. Ownership will be addressed in the evidentiary phase. Judge Merritt didn't smile. He leaned forward slightly. Bailiff, I read exactly what's written. The bailiff lowered his gaze to the page again. Item 2, he read, slower now. One residential property, described as her vacation cabin, located at... He stopped himself from reading the address out loud and glanced to the judge for confirmation. Judge Merritt nodded once. You may omit the full address. Continue. The bailiff continued. Located in Hallow Creek, listed as currently occupied by petitioner's family. Noted to be transferred immediately. My brother's smile didn't move, but his eyes flicked to my parents. They sat stiffly, faces carefully blank, as if they'd rehearsed stillness. Judge Merritt tapped his pen once. Ms. Lane, he said to me, do you own a property in Hallow Creek? I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, because the question was a trap. If I said yes, they'd paint me greedy. If I said no, they'd paint me dishonest. So I responded with the only thing that couldn't be twisted. I own what the record says I own, Your Honor, I said evenly. And I asked for my sealed page to be entered because their list contains something that isn't theirs to claim. My brother's attorney opened his mouth, but the bailiff lifted his eyes again. Your Honor, the bailiff said, the sealed page she submitted appears to attach a registry extract and a lien notice. It references the Hallow Creek property. The word registry made my brother's posture tighten. It was small, almost nothing. But I'd grown up watching him. I knew his tells better than anyone. Judge Merritt's gaze sharpened. A lien notice? The attorney's confidence flickered. Your Honor, that sounds like a side issue. We're here about protective control due to her instability. Judge Merritt cut him off with one raised hand. If the petition is asking me to transfer assets, ownership is not a side issue. He turned to the bailiff. Read the sealed page. The bailiff unfolded my page again and read the header into the record. Notice of interest and recorded restriction, he said. Filed with the county clerk, pertaining to property described as Hallow Creek Cabin. My brother's attorney took a step forward, voice sharper now. Your Honor, we have not been served with... Judge Merritt held up a finger. You will be in a moment. Sit. The bailiff continued, reading only what was necessary, his tone crisp. It states that the property is subject to an active restriction and cannot be transferred without verification due to an ongoing fraud review. It includes a reference number and the name of the initiating party. He paused and looked up again. Not at me, at my brother. My brother's smile finally slipped at the corners. Judge Merritt's voice dropped. What is the initiating party? The bailiff glanced at the line, then read it. Petitioner, Evan Hale. It was quiet in a way that felt physical. My father's throat moved like he swallowed something he couldn't digest. My mother's hands tightened in her lap. Evan's attorney stared at the page as if he'd just been handed a live wire. Judge Merritt leaned back slightly, studying my brother. Mr. Hale, he said, did you file a restriction on a property you claim belongs to your sister? My brother didn't answer right away. He did something else instead. He reached for his attorney's sleeve under the table. A small tug, all like a child who wanted someone else to speak for him. The attorney recovered first. Your Honor, my client is attempting to protect family property from being dissipated. He acted out of caution. Judge Merritt's gaze didn't move from Evan. I didn't ask counsel, I asked him. Evan's jaw tightened. I filed something, he admitted carefully. It was a precaution. She's been hiding assets. We needed to lock it down. I didn't react. I didn't correct him. I let him keep talking. Because every sentence he spoke under pressure made the next part cleaner. Judge Merritt turned to me. Ms. Lane, do you have documentation establishing your claim of ownership? Yes, I said. And it's connected to why their inventory list is dangerous. Explain, Judge Merritt said. I kept my tone measured. That cabin was never family property. It was purchased with money my grandfather left me privately years ago. My brother discovered it when he started digging through records after Grandpa died. He filed a restriction under my name without my consent, then tried to use the restriction as leverage. Today he's asking the court to hand him everything, including an asset he already tried to freeze. My brother's attorney scoffed. Pure speculation. It's not speculation, I said, and I didn't raise my voice. It's timestamps. Judge Merritt's pen stopped moving. Timestamps? I nodded once. The county clerk's portal logs show exactly when the restriction was filed, from what IP address and the digital signature used. I requested those logs after I was notified my property record had been flagged. The attorney's face tightened. Your Honor, IP addresses are technical. We'd need an expert. Judge Merritt's gaze sharpened. Do you have the logs here, Ms. Lane? I reached into my bag again and pulled out a thin packet of printed pages, clean, official, stamped. Not a story, not an emotion, a trail. I walked it to the clerk without hurry. Judge Merritt took the top sheet, scanned the lines, and his expression changed in the smallest, most telling way. He looked at the timestamp first, then at the IP address, then at the associated account name. He lifted his eyes to Evan. Mr. Hale, he said quietly. The filing account used to place the restriction was not your sister's. It was yours. Evan's attorney jerked his head toward him, shocked. What? Judge Merritt continued, voice still calm. And the digital signature attached to the filing is associated with an email address ending in... He stopped, glanced at the bailiff, then back to the page. Hale Holdings. My brother's company, his well-off world, his polished image. Suddenly stamped on a county filing used to lock my property. Evan's smile was gone now. He looked like someone who'd stepped into a room believing he owned it, only to find his own footprints on the crime scene. The bailiff, still holding the petitioner's inventory list, cleared his throat again. Your Honor, he said, and that affects the inventory list directly because Item 2 is listed as her vacation cabin to be transferred, but it's currently under a restriction initiated by the petitioner, which would make this petition... He paused, eyes on the judge now, voice careful. An attempt to transfer an asset under a fraudulent filing. Judge Merritt set the pages down slowly. Then he did something judges rarely do when they're trying to keep the room from catching fire. He looked directly at my brother's attorney and said, Counsel, you're going to want to sit down. My brother's attorney did sit down. Slowly, like his knees didn't want to bend. But he didn't stay quiet. Your Honor, he said, leaning forward again, With respect, this is turning into a collateral dispute over a filing. Our petition is based on her mental state and her pattern of concealment. This court has authority to grant temporary protective control. Judge Merritt lifted one hand, palm out. Not angry, worse than angry, decided. This court has authority to protect people from abuse of process, he said. Right now, I'm seeing a petitioner who filed a restriction under his own account using his company's signature and then walked into my courtroom asking to transfer the very asset he restricted. He tapped the county log printout once, as if tapping it made it heavier. That is not protective, he continued. That is leverage. My brother's face had that tight, glossy look people get when their confidence starts to leak. It was a precaution, Evans said, voice controlled. She's been erratic. She hides things. The judge's eyes didn't leave him. You may stop repeating adjectives and start answering questions. My father cleared his throat in the front row, a small sound that was meant to reclaim attention. My mother leaned forward, lips pursed like she was about to perform disappointment. Evan's attorney recovered and tried a new angle, softer, almost paternal. Your Honor, the family is worried, that's all. We can address the filing later, but in the meantime, we're asking for a temporary order. Control of her accounts, her property, and an evaluation. She's unstable. She's hiding assets. She may be a risk to herself. There it was. The institutional weapon they always reached for when they couldn't win on paper. If they could label me unstable in a court record, they wouldn't need to prove theft. They could just declare concern and take everything with a clean smile. Judge Merritt's gaze flicked to me. Ms. Lane, he said, are you a danger to yourself? No, I answered. Are you a danger to anyone else? No. Evan's attorney opened his mouth again, but Judge Merritt's pen lifted like a warning. I asked her, he said, and Evan leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. I didn't need to hear the words. I recognized the posture. The well-off brother used to getting solutions delivered, not demanded. Judge Merritt nodded to the bailiff. Continue reading the petitioner's inventory list. The bailiff looked back down and resumed in that flat, official voice. Item 3, he read. All contents of respondent's safe deposit box held at First Harbor Bank, box number... He stopped. Not because of privacy this time, because something on the page had caught his attention again, like the list was full of landmines. The bailiff's eyes moved across the line, then to the margin notes, then down to a smaller line beneath it. He lifted his gaze. My brother didn't look at the bailiff. He stared at the judge's bench like he could will the moment to pass, and the bailiff's voice lowered a fraction. Your Honor, the list includes a bank box, but it also includes an attached access authorization number. Judge Merritt's brow tightened. Access authorization? Yes, the bailiff said. A recorded access event. With a date. My brother's attorney stiffened. Your Honor, that's irrelevant. We're listing assets. Judge Merritt cut him off. Read the date. The bailiff's eyes dropped again. It states the box was accessed 2 days ago. 2 days ago. I didn't react. I let the silence do what it always did in a courtroom. Invite people to imagine the obvious. Judge Merritt looked directly at Evan. Did you access a safe deposit box you're claiming belongs to your sister? Evan's jaw worked. He glanced at my parents like they might save him. My mother lifted her chin, expression wounded, and my father stared straight ahead. Evan finally spoke, careful. I have access, he said. It's family-related. Judge Merritt's voice stayed calm. How do you have access to your adult sister's bank box? Evan's attorney tried to step in. He's listed as an emergency contact. Judge Merritt's eyes snapped to him. Emergency contact is not access. The bailiff cleared his throat again. Your Honor, he said, the list specifies the access was granted via a notarized authorization. Notarized. That word made my stomach tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. Because there are only so many ways a notarized authorization shows up in a family case. None of them are clean. Judge Merritt's gaze returned to Evan. Did your sister sign a notarized authorization granting you access to her safe deposit box? Evan didn't answer fast enough. So I did. No, I said. I did not. The judge's pen hovered. Ms. Lane, he said. How do you know? Because I never signed one, I replied. And because the bank notified me yesterday that an authorization was filed under my name. That's why I requested the county clerk logs in the first place. Things started appearing in systems that I didn't do. Evan's attorney's face tightened. Your Honor, she's spinning. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my bag and pulled out a second slim packet. One sheet on top, stapled, crisp. I handed it to the clerk. Judge Merritt scanned it, then glanced up. This is from the bank. Yes, I said. It's the audit confirmation that an authorization was presented. It includes the notary commission number, the time it was filed, and the staff note that the signature didn't match the signature on file. Evan's attorney leaned forward, voice sharp now. Your Honor, now we're in accusation territory. We're going to need time to respond. Judge Merritt's gaze turned to him like a door closing. You already had time, he said. You filed. You petitioned. You asked for everything today. You don't get to sprint into my courtroom and then request a pause when the record starts talking back. The room felt different now. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just alert. People in the gallery leaned forward. The clerk's fingers moved faster. Even the court officer shifted his stance, like he'd stopped treating this as a family squabble and started treating it as something that might spill into criminal territory. Judge Merritt turned to the bailiff. I'd read the notary commission number listed on the bank audit. The bailiff took the sheet the clerk handed him, scanned, and read it into the record. The number meant nothing to most people. But Judge Merritt's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked at Evan again. Mr. Hale, he said, is that commission number associated with someone you know? Evan's throat moved. I don't know. Judge Merritt didn't argue. He simply turned to the clerk. Run it, he said. The clerk hesitated. Your Honor, the notary registry is county. I know what it is, Judge Merritt said. You have access. Run it. The clerk typed. The monitor on the clerk's desk reflected faintly off the judge's glasses as he watched. A few seconds passed. Then the clerk's face changed in a way that made my brother finally look over. Your Honor, the clerk said quietly, the notary commission number returns to a notary public employed by Hale Holdings. My brother's company again. His fingerprints again. Evan's attorney's mouth opened, then closed. My mother made a small sound in the front row. Half gasp, half protest. Evan turned toward his parents, panicked now, whispering, I told you. Judge Merritt's voice cut through whatever Evan was about to say. Enough. He sat back slightly, as if resetting the room. I am not granting any temporary order transferring assets today, he said, firm. I am issuing preservation orders. Evan's attorney snapped his head up. Your Honor? Judge Merritt's gaze stayed on him. You will preserve all communications, drafts, filings, and internal records related to this petition, including any involvement by Hale Holdings staff. You will not alter, delete, or modify anything. Do you understand me? The attorney swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Merritt looked at Evan. Mr. Hale, you will provide to this court, through counsel, the identity of any employee who assisted you with filings or authorizations connected to your sister's property or accounts. Evan's face was pale now, the well-off shine gone. Judge Merritt continued, voice measured. I am also issuing a referral to the county clerk's fraud unit and requesting the bank preserve all audit trails related to the safe deposit authorization. He glanced at me. Ms. Lane, do you have any additional documentation you intend to submit today? I looked at Evan, then at his attorney, then at my parents in the front row, sitting so still they looked carved. Yes, I said, one more thing, and it's why the inventory list matters. Judge Merritt nodded once. Proceed. I reached into my bag and placed one final sealed envelope on the clerk's counter. Please add this to the record, I said calmly. Before the bailiff reads item 4. Judge Merritt didn't even look surprised when the clerk took my sealed envelope. He looked tired, like he'd seen too many families walk in with a story and walk out with a record. Bailiff, he said. Open it. Read only what is necessary for the record. The bailiff broke the seal with the same careful motion he'd used earlier, like paper could cut deeper than steel. He unfolded the page, scanned the header, and his face tightened in that quiet, professional way people get when they realize they're holding something that doesn't belong in a family dispute. Your Honor, he said, this is a certified exhibit from First Harbor Bank's Compliance Department. It includes a notarization journal extract and an identity verification certificate tied to the safe deposit authorization. Evan's attorney shifted in his chair, suddenly too aware of where his hands were. Judge Merritt nodded once. Read the relevant portion. The bailiff's voice went flat again, but it carried. Online notarization session ID, he read. Date and time, 2 days ago at 3:14 p.m. Signer identity verified via government ID scan and knowledge-based authentication. Evan's jaw clenched. The bailiff continued. It lists the signer name on the session as... He paused for a heartbeat, eyes flicking up, then back down, as if he wanted to be absolutely sure before he said it out loud. Evan Hale. The courtroom didn't react the way movies do. Nobody gasped dramatically. Nobody shouted. It was worse than that. Everything went quiet, like the oxygen had been pulled tight. Evan's attorney blinked fast, then he stood halfway and sat back down like his body couldn't decide what posture made him safest. Judge Merritt's gaze stayed locked on my brother. Mr. Hale, he said, slow and even, did you just allow the court to believe your sister signed a notarized authorization when the notarization session lists you as the signer? Evan's throat moved. It's not like that, he said, and his voice had lost its shine. Dana wasn't beside me this time. I was alone, and it mattered that I didn't fill the silence with emotion. Emotion was what Evan wanted. Emotion was what he'd been selling the court. So I let the record keep talking, and the bailiff read the next lines without being prompted, like he understood the importance of momentum. It lists the identification used, he continued. State driver's license ending in 612. It lists the email used for the notary session as evan.hale@haleholdings.com. It lists the IP address used to initiate the session. As he stopped again, looked at the clerk, then read it. The same IP block as Hale Holdings corporate offices. My father's face shifted for the first time. Not anger, not sorrow, panic. My mother's lips parted, and a small sound came out that she tried to swallow back down like she could rewind time by refusing to be seen reacting. Evan's attorney finally found his voice, but it came out sharp and brittle. Objection, Your Honor. This is a technical document without foundation. We have no opportunity to verify. Judge Merritt raised a hand. Sit down. The attorney froze. Judge Merritt didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He picked up the bank exhibit and tapped the bottom margin where the certification language sat. This is certified by the bank's compliance officer, he said. The foundation is the certification. If you want to challenge it, you will do so with evidence, not volume. Then he looked at Evan. Mr. Hale, he said, the court asked you a direct question. Evan's eyes darted to my parents again. My mother stared straight ahead as if refusing to see the problem would make it less real. My father's hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles looked pale. Evan's voice dropped. I was trying to secure what belonged to the family, he said. Judge Merritt's eyes narrowed. By signing as yourself on a notarization session submitted under your sister's name? Evan flinched at the wording. He tried to adjust to soften. She would have destroyed it, he said quickly. She's been acting. Judge Merritt cut him off with a small, decisive motion of his pen. No, he said. We are not doing that. You don't get to commit a technical fraud and then wrap it in concern. The clerk's keyboard clicked faster, capturing every word. Judge Merritt glanced at the bailiff. Continue. What else is in the exhibit? The bailiff turned the page. There is a bank incident report attached, he said. It notes that upon receipt of the notarized authorization, the bank flagged the signature mismatch, initiated an internal hold, and reviewed vault access footage. Evan's attorney stiffened. Your Honor? Judge Merritt didn't look at him. Stop interrupting. The bailiff read the next line, and the air in the room changed again. It notes the petitioner appeared at the bank in person with a representative from Hale Holdings, the bailiff said, and attempted access to the safe deposit box. My brother's face went white. Judge Merritt's gaze sharpened. With a representative, the bailiff nodded, reading. A notary public employed by Hale Holdings. My mother's head turned sharply toward Evan, and for a second her mask slipped. She didn't look disappointed. She looked furious that he'd been careless. Evan's attorney stood again, voice urgent. Your Honor, we request a recess. Judge Merritt looked at him like he'd asked for permission to erase the last 5 minutes. Denied, he said. You asked for everything today. You created urgency. You don't get to slow down when the record catches up. Evan's attorney swallowed and sat. Judge Merritt turned to me. Ms. Lane, he said, did you authorize your brother to access your safe deposit box? No, I said. Judge Merritt's eyes stayed steady. And do you contend he attempted it anyway, using a notarized authorization created through his corporate infrastructure? Yes, I replied. And the bank's report shows it. Judge Merritt nodded once. Then he turned back to the bailiff. Does the bank report state whether access was granted? He asked. The bailiff scanned, then answered carefully. It states access was attempted, he said. It states the bank refused to open the box due to mismatch and initiated an internal fraud hold. It also states the bank preserved footage and escalated to its security and legal departments. I felt something in my chest loosen. Not relief exactly, but confirmation. Because if Evan had gotten into that box, he would have taken anything that could prove what he'd done. He would have smiled in court and claimed it never existed. Judge Merritt set the exhibit down slowly. Then he spoke in a tone that wasn't angry, but it was unmistakably dangerous. Mr. Hale, he said, you have come before this court asking to strip your sister of her property and accounts. Meanwhile, the record shows you initiated a restriction on her real estate using your own corporate signature, and you attempted to access her safe deposit box using a notarized authorization tied to your identity and your company. He paused. I'm letting the words settle where everyone could feel them. I am issuing an immediate protective order, he continued. No contact, directly or indirectly, between Mr. Hale and Mrs. Lane, pending further hearing. I am also ordering preservation of all Hale Holdings electronic records related to these filings and authorizations, including IP logs, email headers, internal notary journals, and any communications with your parents regarding this petition. Evan's attorney's face tightened. Your Honor, Judge Merritt's eyes snapped to him. Do you want sanctions today, counsel? The attorney closed his mouth. Judge Merritt turned to the court officer. Officer, I want Mr. Hale's phone secured for preservation until counsel can provide a forensically sound extraction. If he refuses, I will address it with contempt. Evan stood up so fast his chair scraped, loud in the quiet room. You can't take my phone, he said, voice cracking. This is insane. Judge Merritt didn't move. Sit down. Evan didn't. The court officer stepped closer, one hand out, firm. Sir. Evan's eyes flashed to my parents again, desperate. My father finally stood, speaking for the first time. Your Honor, this is going too far. We're only trying to help our son. Judge Merritt's gaze cut to him. Sit down, he said. Then quieter. You are not a party who gets to control this proceeding. My father sat. Evan's hands shook as he pulled his phone from his pocket, and for the first time, he looked less like a well-off winner and more like a man realizing the room had stopped believing his performance. Had he handed the phone to the court officer like it burned. The court officer placed it in an evidence bag, sealed it, and wrote a label. And that's when Evan did the one thing I'd been waiting for all day. He looked at me with pure hatred and whispered, "You planned this." I didn't whisper back. I didn't smile. I spoke clearly, softly for the record. No, I said. You did. Judge Merritt's pen tapped once. Bailiff, he said, return to the petitioner's inventory list. Continue reading from item 4. The bailiff lifted the list again, and I watched his eyes scan downward until they stopped on the next line. His face went still. He looked up at Evan, then at Judge Merritt, and his voice dropped into a tone I hadn't heard yet, one that sounded less like court and more like warning. Your Honor, he said, item 4 is not a bank account or a property. It's a document, and it's listed as an asset to be transferred. Judge Merritt's brow tightened. What document? The bailiff swallowed once. It's listed as Original Will and Trust Amendment, signed by Harold Caldwell, he said. And the margin note says, retrieve from box once accessed. My brother's head snapped up, eyes wide. Judge Merritt's gaze hardened into something like steel. And in the sudden silence, I realized Evan hadn't come for my possessions because he wanted me to have nothing. He'd come because he needed that document to exist, nowhere but in his hands. Judge Merritt didn't move for a moment. He stared at the inventory list in the bailiff's hands as if the paper had just confessed to something in plain language. Then he lifted his eyes to my brother. Mister, our Hale, he said, slow, you listed an Original Will and Trust Amendment as an asset to be transferred. Evan's attorney stood so fast his chair tipped backward with a harsh clack. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding, he began. Judge Merritt raised a hand. Sit. The attorney didn't sit. Judge Merritt's eyes sharpened. Counsel. The attorney sat. The bailiff kept the list steady, but his voice had changed. The flat recital tone was gone. This was now official concern. The margin note reads, he said, quote, retrieve from box once accessed, end quote. My mother's face drained. My father stared down at his shoes like he was trying to disappear into leather. Evan's jaw worked, and his well-off composure finally cracked at the edges. That's not what it looks like, he said. Judge Merritt didn't react to the phrase. He simply leaned forward a fraction. Then tell me what it is, he said. Evan glanced at his attorney. His attorney didn't save him this time. Evan swallowed. My grandfather had documents, he said, voice tight. We didn't know where they were. We were trying to secure them. For the family. The word family hit the room like cheap perfume. Judge Merritt's gaze flicked to me. Ms. Lane, he said, do you have reason to believe your brother attempted to obtain estate documents improperly? Yes, I replied. How? I didn't over-explain. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin folder, one I'd kept sealed until the right moment, because timing mattered as much as truth. I requested the bank's fraud hold file, I said. They provided a copy of the vault footage stills and the incident log, not just the notarization session. I handed it to the clerk. The clerk stamped it and passed it to the bailiff for the judge. Judge Merritt flipped through the pages. His eyes stopped on a black and white still image. A man in a suit, head slightly turned, holding a folder under his arm. My brother. Standing at a bank counter with a woman beside him, her hair pulled back, her posture rigid. Judge Merritt read the caption beneath the still. Attempted access, he murmured. Accompanied by notary, employed by Hale Holdings. He turned the page. Another still. Another timestamp. A closer angle from the lobby camera. Evan's hand on the counter, fingers splayed like he owned the surface. The notary pointing at a document. Judge Merritt's gaze returned to Evan like a blade finding its mark. "Mr. Hale," he said, "why were you attempting to access a safe deposit box with a notary employed by your company, carrying a document you now admit referenced an original will and trust amendment?" Evan's face twitched. "Because she was hiding it," he snapped, and then he realized what he'd said. Judge Merritt's eyes narrowed. She was hiding it. Evan looked at his parents, desperate. "You told me she would," he said, and his voice cracked on the last word like it had been squeezed out of him. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. My father stared straight ahead, jaw set, as if refusing to blink could undo the sentence. Judge Merritt held up a hand. "Stop," he said. Then to Evan, "You are not in charge of controlling this narrative anymore." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Bring me the petitioner's inventory list." The bailiff walked it up. Now Judge Merritt took it, studied item 4 again, and then placed it on top of the bank exhibit like he was stacking evidence into an unavoidable shape. Then he looked at the clerk. "Call the county clerk's fraud unit," he said. "Now, and note for the record that this court is making a referral." The clerk's fingers flew over the keyboard. Evan's attorney stood again, voice sharper, more afraid. "Your Honor, with respect, this is a civil matter." Judge Merritt didn't even look at him. "Not anymore." The attorney's mouth closed. Judge Merritt's gaze swept the room, my parents, the spectators, the court officer holding Evan's phone in a sealed bag like a captured animal. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you petitioned to take everything your sister owns. You used a fraudulent filing attempt, and you used a notarization infrastructure tied to your corporate entity, and you attempted to access a bank box to retrieve what appears to be estate documents." He paused, letting every clause become its own weight. "I am denying your petition in full," he said. "I am granting Ms. Lane a protective order. I am ordering preservation and production of Hale Holdings communications and digital logs. And I am referring this matter for investigation of fraud and interference." Evan's face went stiff with disbelief. "You can't just—" he started. Judge Merritt lifted his eyes. "I can, and I did." Evan's attorney tried to salvage something, voice pleading now. "Your Honor, at minimum, the estate documents—" Judge Merritt cut him off. "If there are estate documents, the estate will handle them through lawful channels. Not through your client's hands." He glanced at the bailiff. "Do we have any indication the box has been accessed successfully?" The bailiff checked the bank report again. "No, Your Honor, the bank refused access. The box remained sealed." My lungs loosened, quietly. The thing Evan wanted most hadn't been taken. Judge Merritt turned to me. "Ms. Lane," he said, "are the estate documents in your possession?" I kept my voice even. "I have documents my grandfather entrusted to me. I brought them today." Judge Merritt nodded. "Then they will be handled properly." He looked to the clerk. "Schedule a hearing for submission of the estate documents into the record. Counsel for Ms. Lane may coordinate. Mr. Hale will have no contact and no access." The judge's eyes shifted to my parents. "And if any third party attempts to pressure Ms. Lane regarding these documents," he added, "this court will treat it as interference." My mother's chin lifted slightly, like she wanted to protest. Then she saw the court officer's stance, the sealed phone, the bank stills, the notary registry, the county log, and she stayed silent. The hearing ended with a kind of quiet finality. The clerk read the orders, the bailiff collected exhibits. Evan stood too fast again, but this time, the court officer's presence kept him from moving toward me. As people filed out, Evan's attorney leaned close to him, whispering urgently, face pale. Evan stared at the floor like he couldn't understand why money hadn't protected him. My parents didn't look at me. They moved toward my brother as if I was a stranger who'd ruined their day. Evan turned his head at the doorway and looked back once, mine eyes dark and furious. "You think you won," he muttered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give him a speech. "I think you got recorded," I said softly. He flinched at that because he understood what it meant. Outside the courtroom, I didn't stop moving. I walked straight to the clerk's window and scheduled the follow-up hearing with the efficiency of someone who'd learned that justice loves deadlines. In the hallway, my phone vibrated with a new email from the bank. Confirmation that the fraud hold file was preserved, footage archived, audit trail locked. Then another message, this one from a friend who worked in compliance at a different institution, someone I'd quietly called when the first restriction appeared. "They can't clean this, it's already in 2 systems." That was the part Evan had never understood. You can charm a room. You can pressure a family. But once 2 independent systems have the same trail, lies start collapsing under their own weight. Over the next month, consequences arrived without drama. Hale Holdings was served preservation notices. The notary employee was placed on leave pending review. The county fraud unit opened a file and requested records. The bank's security team filed its own report. Evan's attorney stopped sending threats and started sending careful, cautious requests through formal channels. My brother didn't contact me, he couldn't. My parents tried once. An email, 3 lines, full of vague sorrow and no accountability. I didn't answer. I forwarded it to my folder because even apologies can become evidence when people rewrite history later. At the next hearing, I submitted my grandfather's documents properly. I'm under court supervision, with the clerk stamping each page and the judge noting chain of custody. No secrecy. No theatrics. Just process. The trust amendment Evan wanted to steal did exist, and it didn't give him more. It gave him less. My grandfather had written a clause specifically for any beneficiary who attempts to obtain, conceal, alter, or improperly control estate documents. It didn't require a dramatic crime. It required proof of attempted interference. The bank footage, the notarization session, the inventory list margin note, together they painted a clear picture. Judge Merritt didn't shout when he enforced it. He didn't need to. He simply ruled that Evan's distribution would be held pending the outcome of the fraud referral and that he would not be permitted to serve in any administrative role related to the estate. And the well-off brother who walked in smiling like he'd already won had to sit there while the record decided what he deserved. When I drove home, the sky was bright, normal, almost insulting in its calm. I picked up groceries. I bought my daughter's favorite cereal. I got Tyler the exact yogurt he liked. Small things. Ordinary proof that my life wasn't theirs to seize. That night, I tucked my kids into bed and Lily asked me, "Are we safe now?" I kissed her forehead and answered the truth that mattered. "We're protected," I said, "because everything's in writing." A few weeks later, the house felt quieter in a different way. Not tense quiet, but clean quiet. Evan stopped being a shadow at the edge of my mind because he couldn't reach me without touching a court order. And every time my phone buzzed with another official update, another preserved log, another stamped receipt, another scheduled date, I felt the same calm settle in my chest. Not victory. Certainty. The kind that comes when someone who tried to take everything learns that the only thing that matters in court is what you can prove. If you were in my position, would you have confronted Evan the moment you saw the restriction, or stayed silent until you had enough paperwork to end him in one hearing? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories where the loudest person loses to the record, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.